Okay, so today we are on to topic number 10. Yes. And the difficult area is over yesterday. That is the calculation of cost of capital. So now you know about cost of capital, how this 10% came about, how we can calculate that, how we can calculate 5%, the adjustments for debt, the issues about the leverage, should we borrow more and leave up our company to increase the value of the company, or does it not matter? And the views of Modigliani and Miller on this area. When there are taxes involved, perhaps in some way in tax holiday companies it doesn't matter, but when taxes are involved, then there is a tax benefit of borrowing is essentially what is the current thinking. Okay, so today we are going to, I hope, do some interesting work. We are going to consolidate everything that we've done in the last 6 days into some useful models for you to use. And the first one is strategic value analysis. We are looking at strategic versus financial planning. Strategists argue that financial planning is myopic. Myopic is like a racehorse, unidirectional, with blinkers on. Okay, they don't like, they only say that the financial people are doing numbers, ROI and that sort of thing. While the financial theorists and practitioners, however, feel ill at ease at less quantified approaches to strategic planning. So they don't like these mission statements and vision statements that you don't know if you've achieved the mission or the vision. Okay, because there's no quantification of what you have to do. So SVA, which stands for either shareholder value added or strategic value analysis, you will see that it means the same thing because it's a use of how we can, our strategies affect the financial value of the firm. So it is a combined use of the strategic and financial analysis tools to assess the likely value of major investment decisions. What are these decisions? These are decisions that have a major impact on your competitive scope, your competitive style, and competitive advantage. If you remember, Michael Porter, competitive advantage is mainly through either product differentiation or cost leadership. Otherwise, remember, he said you're stuck in the middle. So those that impact on these big decisions is what we're talking about. So examples of such decisions are brand development. We've already talked about the change from Gold Star to LG. And that sort of investment would certainly fit into this category of a strategic investment. Then we have research and development of products and processes, not merely something that replaces or is a product development, but something that truly is what we call a blue ocean strategy or blue ocean product, such as what happened when Apple came up with the iPod and then the iPhone and the iPad. These are major things that have a major impact on the company. Plant and premises, once again, not simply replacement of plant and premises, but strategic investments such as we discussed, flexible manufacturing systems and robotics and so on. IT infrastructure, once again, not merely your computer system that replace the old ones, okay, but these are things that entire businesses are built on. For example, like your Amazons and your Dells and your courier companies, IT infrastructure changes the entire way you do business. So these are the decisions we're talking about, not merely replacement of a machine, but these are not things that affect the strategic value of a business. Okay, so what's the history? The history is that we've had many of the things that we've talked about in the last few days. For finance, we've had discounted cash flow, net present value calculations with us since the 50s. Okay, and then we talked yesterday about Modigliani and Miller and how they said to borrow and buy. So LBOs, leverage buyouts, lots of happenings in that period we had. And also Michael Milken and his junk bonds. Junk bonds were the initial types of subprime mortgages that we had Milton himself actually went to jail for various things, and he's out now and he's become a philanthropist. Okay, but these were already around with us in the finance area in the 70s and 80s. Then we had in the late 70s and 80s, we had portfolio management and efficient markets. So this was essentially the view that markets are essentially efficient, and therefore we can do certain decisions on them, and the capital asset pricing model, which I introduced to you yesterday, CAPM, is part of this portfolio management, where we look at the market risk of companies. We have a portfolio of securities that enable us to get out of non-market risk, and it remains only market risk, and we make decisions based on that. So we've done all this in the finance area. Strategy, you come across all this as well. Experience curve, the growth share matrix, that's the BCG matrix with the cash cows and dogs, Porter's competitive advantage, and Porter's value chain analysis. Okay, so these have been around for a long time. I mean, activity-based costing that we spent a lot of time was in the late 1980s. Okay. So somewhere in the late 1980s, they said, oh, can we bring these together? Can we bring finance and strategy together? Because as I told you, these two are going separately. So initial thinking started about value-based strategic planning. Planning that increased the value of the company, and in the 1990s, it was finally evolved into strategic value analysis. So compared to some of the other things that we've learned, this is relatively new, and you will see in fact that there are a few bugs or problems with this model that we still have to rectify, but by and large it's a very, very good model that can be used by listed and non-listed companies to value your company. This is a company valuation approach. It's company value based on your strategies. Okay, so let's look at what we are saying, that value can be managed. The value can be managed at all levels. There's a direct, identifiable and manageable link between business strategy, operational performance and value. So this is what we are saying, that financial performance is driven by the competitive situation, not the other way around. Remember the man on top of the camel, okay? If the weather forecast turned bad or the bandits attacked his camel train, no profit. So you have to get the competitive situation right in a strategic level. Your business strategy, your market structure, your growth market, mature market, all of that we've looked at, and your positioning. Remember the water buffalo? These things have to be aligned. That's your competitive situation. Getting this right drives your financial performance, and we calculate that through return on capital employed and your cost of capital that we spent yesterday quite a lot of time on. So all of financial performance then ultimately drives shareholder value. Now, when we talk about value, okay, we take the economic concept of value, net present value. So to calculate financial performance, business value and shareholder value, only the discounted cash flow techniques, that is expected future cash flow generated by competitive strategies of the firm, are relevant. The economic view of value is the discounted, is the present value of expected future cash flow. So let us first start by looking at a simple DCF model. What we can use, say, for a simple investment in a machine, and then we are going to play around with this model a little bit, okay, and show you how those principles can be applied to value the company and its strategies. So let's look at the DCF variables. They are net operating cash flow, terminal value, life of the investment, and cost of capital. So let's put this down. Now, I don't know if some of you have brought your laptops. If you want to set up your laptops with a DCF model, I'm going to put it on the board, but you may wish to put it down. I'll give you some of the equations as well. But basically, in an Excel spreadsheet, you will have your KO or your WACC. Okay? You put that in A1, and in B1, you'll have a cell there to put your discount rate. So your WACC, you know how to calculate that. Okay, so I will Let us start with just a simple number. Let's put 10% there. That will be D1. Then in A2, we will start with the life of the investment. Okay, and you'll have period 0, that is today, period 1, 2, 3, 4, let's say 5. Okay, so our machine that we bought, remember I started setting up this for a simple machine, and then I'm going to work on it and erase a few things and add a few things. Okay, so that is the period or the life. The next row, you will have the investment cost, and the investment would be of your fixed assets or your non-current assets. So that is the machine itself, and the machine itself, you assume that you purchase that in period 0, today. Okay, so now when you invest in a machine, that amount of investment is not enough, because you have to buy your raw materials, you have to make your inventory, sell your inventory, have accounts receivable, and so on. So if you are doing a project, you will have to invest also in working capital. So investment in working capital. Okay. Investment in working capital. So investment in working capital does not happen in period 0. You don't have to get all your raw materials and your debtors, everything in period 0. It will happen throughout the year. So rather than, remember I simplify an assumption, okay, that if something doesn't happen today, we assume that it happens at the end of a period. Okay, so even if say today is January 1st, and we spend some money on January 2nd, we assume it happens on December 31st. And some of you might say, why do you do that? Well, if you want more accuracy, you can make the periods, say, quarterly, and assume it happens at the end of the quarter, but you have to divide the WACC by 4. Because we're talking about future cash flows, annual cash flows enough. Okay, so the working capital investment is at the end of period 1. Okay. Now we run the business and we have sales minus operating expenses and so on. Please note that depreciation and amortization should not be part of your net present value calculation, because these are non-cash items. The depreciation actually happens 100% depreciation when you purchase the asset. You show it there, you don't need to allocate this purchase over the years. We're only taking cash flow. So depreciation and amortizations and anything non-cash does not form part of our calculation. It's only cash. So net operating cash flows these would be your sales less cost of sales, operating expenses like salaries and electricity and so on. And for simplicity, I will also take tax. The cash that is either has to be spent or saved on tax, I will put it for the moment under operating cash flows. Okay, I will not put interest. Again, interest you will not use in your cash flows, although some of you will say, but interest we have to pay. No, interest we don't use, because we are using the discount rate to capture the interest calculation. Okay, if you deduct interest as a cash flow and also use the discount rate, you will be double counting. Okay, so other than interest, all operating cash flows, including tax flows, we will put there. So that would happen at the end of a period, over the life of the investment. Okay, so now comes the end of the investment. So we have to now, this investment is closed. We can recover our fixed assets, so terminal value of the fixed assets. So we can recover some of this money either as a second hand value, sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative. If you have to pay money for someone to take your asset away, it could even be negative. So that's the terminal value of the fixed asset. What about the working capital? What about the working capital? What happens to that? So let's look at that one. We're going to look at the working capital cycle. Okay, so first of all, the working capital cycle, you will need raw materials to make your inventory. So there will be purchasers. The purchasers, if they are on credit, there will be accounts payable. These purchasers are brought into the raw material stores. What is used in the factory goes into work in process. What is not used would be raw material inventory. So the raw material is taken into production. What is finished goes to finished goods stores. What is unfinished remains as work in process inventory. So the production that is finished goes to finished goods inventory, and from there we have sales, and if you sell on credit there will be accounts receivable or debtors, and the debtors pay you cash, and the cash is used to settle your creditors. Okay, so you can see that if you have a good profit margin here, there will be more cash than required for purchasers, only because we need cash for the other operating expenses, and we need cash to give our shareholders and debt holders, we need profit in the shareholders. So if you don't have enough cash, of course, the company shrinks and you go bankrupt. Okay, so this is the working capital cycle. You will notice that the definition of working capital is, you can see, current asset, current asset, current asset, current asset, current asset, less current liability. So working capital equals current assets minus current liabilities. Okay? So as you can see, once you inject the money into working capital, the first round, you don't have to keep injecting it if you're not growing the business. If the business is the same or that particular project is not growing, then the same money goes round and round. Okay? So you don't need to invest every year in working capital unless your sales you want to grow. It's the same money going round and round. Let's ignore the inflation issue. Okay, so now what happens at the end of the project? This particular investment of this machine, okay, it's end of its life, you have sold the machine. What happens? For this machine, we don't need to buy any more purchases. So we have no, once you pay the last round of payables, no more purchases. You use up all the raw materials. for this particular machine, your working process is finished, your finished goods are sold, your accounts receivable is collected, and the cash no longer is required to pay your current liability because there were no more purchases. That cash comes out of the business to go into the next project. Okay, you need cash to buy the purchases and so on for the next project. So what I have shown you here is that exactly the same amount of money that went in here would come out here for the next project. Okay. So this particular investment in this asset is finished. Maybe you have bought a new asset and that money is now available to be used in the as working capital in the next investment. Okay. So these are the cash flows. So now let us add these. So you can see this is called net cash flows, NCF. First year, period 0, start of the year. The year 1, there will be a little bit only, could be a minus even, because the investment required for working capital. That's why I said don't expect a project to get a profit on the first year. Then of course it starts to make some cash flow. And the last year, you have a number of cash flows in this project, which includes the terminal values. Of course, now you know that you can't add these numbers because they are of different purchasing powers. So we have to discount them. The percentage discount rate. Okay, so let's look at our what we did on in terms of compounding and discounting. If I can find it. Here it is. So discounting, the equation is 1 plus I, in this case the WACC, to the power minus the period. So now those who have the Excel can do this equation equal. Okay, you come to this cell here, equal. So it will be, put a couple of brackets, you never know how many you need. Okay, so it will be 1 plus, what is this number? That will be, as I told you, B1. So B1, okay, if you're having the same discount rate for every year, what you do is you put a dollar sign in front of the B and behind the B, and you put 1. If you want, you can put this in brackets. Okay, so that means that when you copy paste, it will always keep that cell locked. Okay. So now you can close that bracket. Now we can open another bracket if you want. Minus. Okay. Sorry. To the power is this symbol here, the hat symbol. To the power, open a bracket, minus, and what is n? N would be this cell here. But that one don't lock because we are going to change it. So it will be B2. Okay, now you can close the brackets. Let's count the number of brackets. These two are okay, those two are okay. I think there's one extra bracket. Okay, that should do it. Okay, so this would give you the discount rate for this particular cell here. So now you do copy paste, and when you paste it, what will change is the minus will be in the first one minus 0, minus 1, minus 2, minus 3, and so on. So that will give you your discount rate.
So copy paste in the horizontal cell.
Yeah, copy this and then paste it. the equation.
That equation is the first one.
Yeah, so this equation is this one here. I'm getting that equation, right? So bracket 1 plus. So 1 plus. Sorry. The first value. What first value?
1.
We don't take that at the moment. I'm taking this value from here. Okay? So this is what I'm doing is this cell here. I'm showing you what the equation is for that cell there. That's it. Okay? So the equation is 1 plus, you lock this in point, that will become 0.1 to the power minus b2, which will be this column here. So it will be, this works out to, this will be 1 plus 0.1 or 1.1, 1.1 to the power minus 0. Okay?
What
Next
happened-
one will be minus 1 and so on.
What happened in a situation where the whack is different each year? Or
Yeah, if that is it, you remember you're staying today and this is looking into the future. If you have a very good oracle that can show you what the WACC, like the term structure of interest rates, and you're confident that you can predict the WACC every year, then you don't have to put the dollar signs. Then you will have to put the WACCs here, 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 and then when you put copy paste, it will pick up from here or in that area. If you don't have the dollar sign. Okay, by dollar sign I'm locking it onto the first year. If you have other WACCs, 0.15, 0.18 and so on, then don't put this dollar sign above and before and after the column number.
alternatively, is that there should be a macro in Excel to do it for you.
But macro will have to point to something. Unless you want to have a compounding rate there, right? That's getting, I mean, if you are trying to predict the compounding rate for the interest or the discounting rate, okay, but that then you may wish to use a macro, but again, it's no point because you can fix it over here, right? So this would be which is fairly straightforward. Macros are used when you have a number of factors that come into account. GDP, all of these sorts of things, you might wish to work something out. Unnecessary because you're trying to predict the future and you don't have very much information. Okay, anything else? Right, so for those who are mathematically inclined, what is any interest rate to the power minus 0? How much is that? What's the value of that? You might wish to check it in your, how much did it come to?
Would be the way.
How much?
The factor 10.
No. How much is the discount rate, this equation, when it's minus 0? What does that mean? Yes, 1. This, anything to the power minus 0 collapses into 1, 100%. Okay? So the value of this first box will be always 1. That should have come up there. This would be 0.9, less than 1, because that's discounting, and so on. When you do a copy paste, you will find numbers like that. Okay? Which is the meaning of discounting. Why is it 1? It's also logical, not only mathematical. Today's value is today's value. There's no discounting required. So you multiply by 1. Okay? And it also comes from the equation. Okay, now we can, so these numbers will come up here, right? Now we can do DCF, discounted cash flow. So you multiply this number by the discount rate, that will be your discounted cash flows remember that all of this is now in today's values. All of this is in today's values, so the cash flows is your present value. The period 0 is your cost. So net present value equals present value minus cost. And if your net present value is greater than or equal to 0, we will be accepting the project from a finance perspective. Okay, so this is a straightforward net present value calculation for, say, the purchase of a machine, to see if it is worth purchasing the machine or not. Okay. It's also a summary revision for some of you. Okay, any questions up to now?
No question, maybe not directly related to this. How does it exactly refer to the way by we are calculating internal rate of return?
Okay. The internal rate of return is basically what, when you go to Excel and ask for the internal rate of return, I mean Excel will find you the net present value as well. What Excel is actually doing is it is doing trial and error. It is changing and changing this number, right, until the net present value becomes 0. So you really have to increase. If this net present value is positive, then you try 11%, 12%, 13% like that. So the WACC at which the net present value becomes 0 is your internal rate of return. Okay, that's the answer. Yes. Sorry? This number is the life of the investment. I mean, you put any number you want. Wait, plus is the total. You summarize this, the summation of this is the total here. So you can do with Excel, you look at all the numbers and press the summation key. Why is it negative? Yeah, that's year 0 is negative because that's the money you spend on the machine. Yeah. Okay. So the cost will always be negative. And similarly with the investment in working capital. Any questions?
The cost always will be negative.
Yes, if you're buying a machine, you're buying a BMW, you're not going to get money from your agent. You're going to pay money, so it's going to be negative.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other,
I don't know.
We have that somehow promotion. If you buy a car,
If you're a celebrity, like what happened to Lee Kuan Yew, he got money to take an apartment condominium because they want to sell another condominium, saying Lee Kuan Yew is living here. Yeah, in that case, you're right. Okay, but otherwise you have to pay money.
the discount rate is a subjective figure.
Discount rate?
Yes.
No, we spent.
I know.
I don't want to go over yesterday again.
I know, but what I'm saying is that the rate that you choose, you say it has an element of risk, has an element of has an element of the interest rate that you're going to pay. It has an element of the inflation in it as well.
Correct.
But in general terms, in real terms, well, how would you quantify those figures?
No, so basically, the discount rate that we're using is our WACC, right? So in our WACC, we have equity, and the people who are having shares in your company will want to get enough return to cover their inflation, interest rate, and also risk the debt in. And we'll have debt which will be always lower because there is no risk, or less risk, I could say. So combining that, we are using the WACC, and that is what we are using here.
Okay.
So you can do a few bits of adjustment. Finance people do things like removing the risk element by not having a single cash flow, instead using a probability distribution for the cash flow. You can say, okay, in times of recession, this is what we'll expect. In normal growth, this is what we do, and in boom conditions. what are the probabilities of those cash flows, and then you get the expected value, right? If you are going to adjust cash flows for risk by using probabilities, then you must remove risk from your discount rate, especially for your debt, because now you're using a risk-free rate. So there's lots of little adjustments. If you put inflation into your cash flows by putting a compounding factor for inflation here, remove that from your discount rate. Okay, so if you take some of these finance books, they give all those things. Highly unnecessary. It's like, this is enough. Just pick your expected values without adjusting for risk or inflation, and use the back, because that already has incorporated by your investors those numbers of risk and inflation.
Practical difficulty to this graph because real times. When we apply this kind of when we are using a spreadsheet and those, the calculation seems to be pretty straightforward and easy. Only thing like even I have done many times like internal rate of return calculations and the operations team, like the main challenges would be to arrive at the investment in working capital and the net operating capital for the future. And if once it is turning out to be negative, they are coming up with pretty surprising figures. Like they are all of us taking the inflows and all of us are coming to be pretty much profitable investment. So many times like how strong their operations, if they are highly influential in the internal markets, they can also change the figures and numbers.
This is what I told you in, I think, day one. Okay, that when you are doing the accounting, remember what box you are in. Okay, do you understand what the objectives are, and do you understand the cause-effect relationship? And where these are concerned, it all depends on what answer you want. Okay, now in the carbon trading area, I may have mentioned to you that the rules are quite stupid, because you can only claim something as a carbon credit if the project is a loss, right? If the project is a loss, you can claim a carbon credit. If the project is positive, you can't. So if a project is a loss, the only reason you do a project as a loss is if the carbon credits make it profitable. No one invests in projects for a loss. So what do? We fix the numbers. We increase the discount rate. We reduce the cash flows. In that case, we are working the opposite of what you are saying. We are changing the numbers to find a loss. In other cases, when you want to justify to management, change the numbers. Okay. So that I am not talking about the accuracy here. I am just talking about the computation method. Okay. And you are quite right. The political aspect of these calculations is a different matter. Any other questions? Okay, so this is the straightforward NPV calculation. What we are going to do now is to start working with this model to value our company. And in this case, I will show you that you can't measure the figures too much. Okay, so estimating operating value. Operating value reflects the market expectation of future financial performance. Cash with the profit from the business, less any change or reinvestment in the business net assets. Operating value, the present value of all future cash flows available to the owners of the business. Okay, so what this means is cash flow is not merely net operating cash flow, but net operating cash flow after you take away whatever money you require for reinvestment in the business's assets. Okay. So we come up with this concept of free cash flow. So profit versus cash flow versus free cash flow, not the same. Just see your notes to see if that is reflected in your notes.
Yes, yeah.
Page 7. Yeah, it's in page 7. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Okay. So investment in fixed assets and working capital means that high profit does not equal to high cash flow. So let's look at an example here. Let us say net profit from accrual accounting is 1,000. That's from your IFRS accounts. Remember, you add back anything that is not in cash, like depreciation, you get a cash flow. What are the other items that you add back or add on? Goodwill amortized, research and development written off, accruals and prepayments, provision for bad debts, cumulative losses and gains. Remember, this is all to do with the depreciation adjustment. Okay. So all of these are non-cash things that we do in accrual accounting. So all of those you have to either add or subtract. Okay, so this figure here is pure cash flow, but that is still not free for the investors because we need money for capital expenditure in fixed assets, remember the money that we've spent here, and also working capital growth, the one here. So free cash flow is only 50, although cash flow may be 1,100. Okay, so that is the cash flow available to the owners of the business that will be, of course, giving them value in their company. So we've seen this. So what we're saying is net cash flows less change in net assets equals free cash flows, cost of capital using the discount as a discount rate gives you the operating value. So if I can have these operating cash flows, okay, that will give me my operating value. Now I'm going to make a few changes to my model here. I'm going to try to calculate the value of the company. The first thing I have to do is have a look at this. This is for a single machine. First of all, what I'll do is I'll change life to strategic planning period. Now it's not a simple machine, it's the whole company. The strategic planning period instead of life. Now over the life of the investment, I will be not only making a purchase at a particular point in time, I'll be purchasing assets throughout the year. Okay, in the whole company, not a single project. So in the whole company, I will be basically having investments throughout the year. So therefore, look what I am doing. No longer will there be a period zero, because it's not a single investment. It is an investment throughout the year. We are going to buy different assets and sell different assets. So my investment is for the whole company would be fixed assets over here. Is that okay? Okay, it's not a single purchase on a particular day. It is purchasing different assets throughout the year. So we simply assume that it all happens at the end of the year. Okay. So now you can see the concept of free cash flow in year one. See, look at the board. This is net cash flows minus fixed assets minus working capital. So in the first year, that will be your free cash flow. What about the second year? Are we going to stop buying assets in year one only? We are talking about a company like LG who has to buy lots and lots of assets throughout the year, throughout the planning period. So every year there will be some investment in fixed assets and some investment in working capital. So you can think of the concept of free cash flows every year over the planning period. So every year there will be free cash flows. Is that okay? Any questions? Okay, so next is cost of capital. That is the figure here. I'm not going to put you all through yesterday. We did enough work on the cost of capital. It is the minimum acceptable return, shareholder return because the risk being undertaken. And you've seen this diagram yesterday. It's a combination of the cost of debt after tax, and we are using the capital as a pricing model for the cost of equity. So that's the cost of equity and the cost of debt. So we have done the discount rate. So this would be your discount rate. I've given you the equation as well. That doesn't change. Okay. Now comes the last bit. What is the only one that I haven't yet marked off? What I haven't marked off yet is this terminal value. These two numbers here. Terminal value. Okay. The problem is that in an asset there is a terminal date, end of the asset's life, useful life. But in a company, especially the company that you all are working in, hopefully, there is no terminal date. We have to assume that the company is a going concern that has no terminal date. So we can't use the word terminal. We have to use the word continuing. So this concept of assets being sold and working capital recovered doesn't apply to a company. So we have to change this to continuing value. And now the question is, how do we calculate the continuing value? How do we calculate the continuing value? Okay, so if we can calculate it in some way, then we can discount the operational cash flow in the strategic planning period, and then whatever the value of the company at the end of that planning period, we can also discount it, and together will be the value of the company today. Okay, now an interesting problem. I told you all the bugs haven't been ironed out. What are we trying to do? We are trying to value the company today, but to value the company today, we need to value the company in 5 years' time. A bit of a chicken and eggs problem, isn't it? To get today's value, we have to find tomorrow's value. So how do we do it? Okay. You see the problem? What the value of the company after the planning period has to be found out to then discount to get part of today's value. So let's see what we can do. Now there are two alternative traditional methods to value a company, even if it is not a listed company. Those who are in family businesses and other businesses that are not having a stock market value should look at this method carefully and try to understand it. First one uses the price earnings ratio. So what we do is we determine a representative price earnings ratio to apply in the valuation and multiply this price earnings ratio with the after tax earnings of the business to be valued. So let's look at that. Price earnings ratio. So the PE ratio equals price per share, okay, divided by earnings per share. Price per share divided by earnings per share. That's the price earnings ratio. So what do? We are trying to find out our price per share. Okay, so price per your own price per share equals some representative PE ratio multiplied by your own earnings per share. Everyone will have earnings per share, that is your profit figure after tax, equity profit divided by the number of shares. So you find that out even for a non-listed company, multiplied by a representative price earnings ratio for your industry, plenty available from firms and consulting firms, and you multiply these two, you get your price per share. You multiply that by the number of shares, and you get your company's share value. You don't have to pay consulting firms like Accenture $2 million and so on. It's a fairly straightforward calculation. Okay? So before we analyze this further, let us see if you understand the concept of a price earnings ratio. Okay, now I'm going to give you 3 companies. A, which has a PE ratio of 10, B, that has a PE ratio of 30, and C, that has a PE ratio of 300. Okay, now you can ask me any question you want about these 3 companies, but tell me which company would you invest in? Which company would you invest in? Sorry?
What's the price of the share?
The price of the share is incorporated in this number. Good question. I will give that to you later. But it is actually incorporated in this number. Any other question?
Number of shares.
Number of shares is not relevant.
You will invest in A.
Sorry?
You will invest in A.
You would invest in A. No questions asked before you start spending your money to invest. You don't want to know anything about A. You're going to invest money purely based on the price earnings ratio.
Are the industries the same or different industries?
Sorry, that question?
The industries, are they?
Very good question. They are not. They are different. Anything else?
What is the nature of investment? Long lasting.
They're, all I can say is they're different, and the question that you're asking is, are these price earnings ratios representative of their industry? And the answer is yes. They are about what the industry expects.
Duration.
This is today's. That's the price earnings ratio in the papers this morning. Are you going to run out and buy? There was a good question here about the price. There's one other question you should ask me related to that. And then I'll give you the numbers. He asked what's the price per share of the companies. What's the other important question?
If you're earning.
The dividend is not relevant. Close by. What's the
Earning.
what is the earnings? What are the composition of these 2 numbers? So now I'll give that to you. So the price earnings ratio of the price of A is $1. The earnings is 10 cents. The price of the P ratio of, no, let's put this as $10, and the earning is $1. The price per share here is $1. The earning is 0.033, and the price per share here is also $1, and the earnings, or we make it $10, and the earnings is 0.033. Okay, now what? Are you now going for A? Come on, you're the hotshot finance people who are investing in the market all the time, and I'm asking a simple question. You can't see. So one is $10 per share, and the earnings was $1. Other one is $1 per share, and the other one is also $10, but the earning is the same as the B.
To go for B.
You go for B. Any reason?
So revenue 30%.
But A is even better. Okay, what his answer was, he's looking at the percentage return. Note this equation I gave you yesterday. The percentage return takes the investment as the denominator and the cash flow as the numerator, which is the inverse of the PE ratio. The cash flow here is at the bottom, denominator, and the investment of price is in the top. So What he's saying is lower the price earnings ratio, higher is the return. So he's going for, but you went for B when the answer there was A. Is that correct? If so, why is Google was at one stage 600 price earnings ratio? Should people have kept away from Google? Obviously not. Why were people willing to pay a high price for Google? A high price earnings ratio. Okay, so where does that show up here? Obviously, they're hoping for that, increase in the share price of the return. Okay, so let's analyze this P/E ratio. Please note that the price is today's price, and earnings per share is the last reported based on the financial accounts. That is how P/E ratio is calculated. It's price as it moves today divided by the last reported earnings per share. Okay, so what does it tell about this? Okay, what it tells is this, that for company A, the earnings per share here, okay, if the earnings per share is similar to what next year, to what it was last year, last reported, then you'll have to wait 10 years to get your money back, right? In the case of B, if the next earnings is the same as the last reported earnings, you'll have to wait 30 years. And over here, these guys will have to wait 300 years. Their great grandchildren is going to get the money back. Okay? So obviously, people are expecting the earnings not to be the same, correct? So they expect these earnings to go up only a little bit. 10 years is about okay. These earnings to be slightly higher in the next period, and these earnings to be very high. Okay, so they expect next year's earnings to be dramatically more than the current earnings. That is why they're willing to pay a high price today for the share. Understood? Okay, now back to my question. Which share will you invest in? Still A. Why?
We are following the monkey.
Well, you'll get an average return over 10 years.
But the cost of money in 10 years is different after 300.
No. Please, I'm not saying that you have to wait 300 years. I'm saying that people are paying $10 because they expect next year to get maybe $1 on this share earnings. Okay. So now what? Go for B. Why B? Risk. Okay, so you are sort of moderate. Okay, so you have talked about the correct terminology. Remember that along with return is risk. So this A is a low risk company. The share price, the earnings may go up a little bit, come down a little bit. This one, earnings may go up, but it may fall. This one can completely tank. It can go this way, but it can go the other way. High risk. Okay, now what? Which one will you invest?
Depends on the risk you want to take.
Thank you. That's the answer. It depends on your risk profile. If you are a very conservative person, or you are a company that is in, say, something like insurance, where you want a regular cash flow without any risk, because you have to make payments, you'll be probably going for companies like this with low volatility. That is medium volatility, and this is high. So a person who wishes to take a chance would go for something like C. So it depends on your risk profile. Okay, so this is the analysis of what a PE ratio means. Now I know that many journalists don't understand this. Sometimes the same journalist might say the PE ratio is low by, and another time he might say the PE ratio is high by, without understanding at all that all the PE ratio does is give you an indication of the earnings growth potential in the future. Low growth potential, medium growth potential, high growth potential, but along with it comes the risk. Okay, so now let's get back to our model. P ratio is good. Advantage is that P ratios are widely used and readily available. But the disadvantage is, for our purposes, we are wanting a P ratio in 5 years' time. Okay. It is reasonably accurate today, but can we say it's going to be the same in 5 years' time? For example, if this company C paid $1 next year, what will the PE ratio be? It will be 10. From 300, it will go to 10. If they had paid, say, 6 cents next year, that will be 150. You can see how volatile it could be. If they paid 6 cents here, it will be 150. So, trying to estimate a P ratio in the future is problematic because they are very volatile. It is okay for today, but not the future. So that we can't use. Any questions? The next method, again a method that is often used by consultants firms, is called the market to book ratio. Here we determine a representative market to book ratio to apply in the following formula. The market to book ratio is the market value of the firm divided by the book value of the firm. So, market to book ratio, you take the market value of the firm divided by the financial accounting IFRS book value. Okay, this value here. This can be obtained from a commercial source. So, how you would calculate your market value? So, you are trying to calculate market value. You will take your own company's book value and multiply it by a representative market to book ratio. You multiply this market to book ratio by the book value of your business. Okay, so this is how you do it. Your market value will be the market to book ratio multiplied by your own financial accounting value. Now, this is a lot of consultants make a lot of money by selling this idea, but for me it is absolutely useless because of the complete distortion that you can do even today with IFRS, okay, in terms of your company's financial accounting book value. So I think there's only disadvantages for our purposes. I am suspect of the number even here, and to think that that number can be applied in 5 years' time, I say market to book ratios only also move over time, and there are many distortions in book values. So some companies pay consultants a lot of money to do this calculation, but I think it gives a meaningless value or highly distorted value. And anyway, it's not good for us when we want something in the future. So now we are having a problem. We can't find a contributing value by using the traditional methods. So what can we do? Well, we are going to use an alternative approach called the perpetuity method. The formula: present value of a perpetuity, you have to simply divide by the WACC. What's the meaning of the word perpetuity? Perpetuity is an equal cash flow that you get every year till year infinity. Okay? So we are going to make an assumption, simplifying assumption, that from period 6 to infinity, please don't ask me what one day before infinity is, okay, but from period 6 to infinity, right, we are going to assume that this company has a same cash flow every year. The cash flow that you've had in period 5, you don't have to make any more investments in fixed and working capital. So then we can assume that the cash flow will not grow. It's a same cash flow every year. If that's the case, all you have to do is to divide that cash flow by the WACC, not 1 plus the WACC, but simply the WACC, 10%, and that will give you your value over here. Okay, P5, and then you take that value and use this discount rate to bring it to the present value. So there's a double discount. Cash flow from year 6 to infinity divided by the WACC gives you this number, discount that to give you present value. Okay, so that is what we are assuming. Okay, the perpetuity method. So the continuing value is your perpetuity cash flow divided by WACC. So steps, determine this continuing value by this formula and then discount it to the present. Okay. Now this has few simplifying assumptions and problems. Advantages considered by many to correspond broadly with the realities of business, and the calculation dovetails with the net present value approach, your terminal value. Disadvantages implies no cash flow growth in future investments. So we are assuming that we are not going to make any more investments in fixed assets and working capital, and therefore this cash flow will be the same forever. The jump from the planning period to continuing value is too sudden, going from all these planning cash flows suddenly to a single value is very sudden, despite the fairly conservative assumption. Because this continuing value range, because business plans typically cover 5 years or less, we must make assumptions which will allow us to value cash flows for the remainder of the business life. The magnitude of the continuing value is the problem. One of the weaknesses of the SPA computation, however, is that too much of the overall value is in the continuing value. So we have the operational value, which is the discounted cash flows there, and the continuing value, but you will find that this continuing value has too much of the company's value in it. Okay? Not enough of the strategies. This is despite the conservative assumption of zero growth in sales after the planning period. Okay, so let's look at the valuation stages. We need to project the annual operating cash flow, that is this cash flows here. We need to estimate the cost of capital, that's the figure here, cost of capital. And we need to estimate the continuing value. Those are the valuation stages. So let's look at first of all the annual operating cash flow. Now, in a sophisticated model, you can do this product by product, okay, line by line, segment by segment. And you've got a sort of some way that was done in the Rocksoft case. But what I'm going to give you now is called a scratch pad model. A model that all of you can go back to your companies, listed or not, and work out your strategic value of your business. And if it is problematic, start getting your CV and resume ready to apply for another job. Okay, so everyone tomorrow can do this for your own company. And it's a very popular assignment that many people give in to give the continuing value of their company. Consider those factors or value drivers critical in influencing the cash generating capacity of the firm. So, this scratch pad model, we look at some critical success factors to calculate it. And what are they? They are the key performance indicators in the firm. And a person called Alfred Rappaport, okay, proposed these 7 value drivers. Okay, that the 7 value drivers in a company are the sales growth rate, the operating profit margin, cash tax rate, fixed capital needs, working capital needs, planning period, and cost of capital. So you need notice that the first 5 are required for free cash flow, and the other 2 to discount to the present. So let's look at an example now. Please stop me at any stage, okay? Because this is important for you to work out your company's cash position tomorrow. We will use the following 7 value drivers. Okay. Now please note that these numbers I have given you in the example, but in the case study that you are going to do after this, you'll have to calculate these numbers, some of these numbers, okay, which you'll have to do for your own company. So I can tell you that the better groups will get this right, but most of you might get these two numbers wrong. So I'm giving you a challenge here. Okay, some of these are easy, but these two are a bit difficult to calculate. But let's assume that we have got these numbers. So then you're told that the current, you need to do a sales forecast, so we will use the current sales, which is 2 million, and grow it for the next period by the growth rate in sales, which is of course 5%. So the sales forecast for next year will be the current sales of 2 million plus 5% growth, which is about 2.1 million. The remaining two value drivers are required to scale down the cash flows to give you present value. Okay, now you have to have in front of you this model here, this scratchpad model. So see how it works. Sales in the most recent period, 2 million. If sales are not growing, please note, if sales are not growing, then 8% of those sales adjusted for tax will give you a profit of 112. But sales are growing by 5%, which means 5% of that will be after tax with a profit margin 8%, another 5,600. But for sales to grow by 5%, we need to invest 20%, okay, in in fixed capital and 15% in working capital. Now this 20 and 15 is related to this, okay, because you calculate it by current sales minus the sales growth rate, and to get that sales growth rate, the fixed assets needed. So that's why I told you these two numbers you have to think about before you calculate. Anyway, these are the investments, the negative numbers here. Now some of you might be thinking, this does not make sense. Okay? To get 5,600, you're investing 35,000. No. The 5,600 you're getting this year. This 35,000, you'll be getting this 5,600 every year for the future. Okay? So this is the annual return of that investment. Okay? So your free cash flow is 82,600. That is 112 plus 5, 6, that's 17600, minus 20, minus 50. Any questions up to now? Yes?
This is for the growth for the first year.
Yes,
The
correct.
second year growth also, we will add the 20% and 15% for the
Yes.
fixed asset.
Yes.
So every year we have to add.
Yes. All of this will grow. So next year, this number will be 2.1 million, and that will grow by 5% and so on. So when you set this up on Excel, it's quite easy to find the cash flows as they grow, but a shortcut is simply to take the 5% growth rate. See this, first 82,600 compounded by 5% using your compound equation. Your compounding equation, 1 plus I to 5% will give you your, so 1 plus 0.05 will give you your free cash flows every year. Okay, that's a shortcut. The long cut is to do all the branches every year on Excel. Once you set the model up, it's easy to do the long way. Okay, so that is your free cash flows. So what I have done now, please note, is I have calculated all these numbers here for 5 years. Now I am going to discount it to get an operating value. Okay. So all those cash flows discounted, I get an operating value. So does anyone want to do the shortcut for the discount rate again? Your calculator, remember, 1.12 divide equal will give you 0.893, equal again 0.797. Okay, right. Okay. So adding all that, the present value, adding all that, will give you operating value of 325. Now comes continuing value. Okay, now let us assume that our planning period is just 1 year. Our planning period is only 1 year. That means from year 2 to infinity, our cash flow will be only that cash flow divided, and you divide that by WACC to get the present value at the end of year 1. So have a look at this. If our planning period is just 1 year, then from year 2 onwards, we will have no more investment in fixed and working capital. So our cash flow will be 170,600, divide that by the WACC, and you get the continuing value at the end of period 1, discounted by 1 year, and you get present value. Okay. So the 170,600 divided by 12 will give you 980. That's the continuing value at the end of year 1. Discount that, you get present value. So our planning period is 5 years. You can see that you can get a continuing value every year using the model. But in this case, please don't add this up. This is a single figure, and at the end of 5 years, your continuing value will be 675. Okay. That is from year 6 to infinity, cash flow divided by WACC, discounted to the present by the discount rate, would give you that figure there. Okay, so now we add the two up. So your operations gives you 325, your continuing value is 675, put together is the business value. Please note one of the problems, that the continuing value is 2/3 of your strategic value, or double your strategic value, and 2/3 of the value of the company. So that's why I said the magnitude of this continuing value is quite high. That's one of the problems in this model. I mean, you can reduce it by increasing the number of years, but then how long in the future can you realistically plan? Okay, so now we put it all together. Your operations is 325, your continuing value is 675, the business value we already said is 1.876. Take away your marketable securities, that is your investments in other companies and so on, that is not related to operations. So that will be an asset here that is marketable securities. Take that away, that gives you corporate value of your strategies. Sorry, not take it away, what am I saying? Add it on, and then take away your debt, which is this side here, the debt, to give you shareholder value. Divide that by the number of shares, and you get your share price. Okay, so that is the SBA valuation of your company, which you can do for your own company tomorrow.